Well, hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Jonathan McCrea. It is Science Week, and this is the Festival of Farming and Food. My name is Jonathan McCrea. As I said, I'll be your host for this morning. We've a fantastic event lined up for you. All of these events that we've had over Science Week and tomorrow's event are free. They're sponsored by Science Foundation Ireland and Teagasc. And all we ask of you is that you let us know what you make of them. You'll get an email after this with a survey in it. If you could respond to that, we'd really appreciate it because it helps us shape events into the future. So we're going to be here for the next hour or so chatting with scientists about fruit and veg. They're all from Teagasc Food Research Centres in Ashtown and in Moore Park. And they're carrying out cutting edge research looking at what happens when we put our food in our mouths, what is the journey that food takes, how taking these vegetables and fruit out of the ground or off the tree, how that affects them, how we package them, and so on. So you can ask your questions, anything about fruit and veg, in the Q&A section underneath this video. Now, you can also use hashtag FestFarmFood or tag us at Teagasc. If you are commenting or asking a question, please do let us know where you're from, or if you're at a school, what school you're from. We'd love to give you a shout out. As I say, this episode of in the series is all about fruit and veg because 2021, believe it or not, is the International Year of Fruit and Vegetables. And we're supposed to be eating up to as many as 7 portions a day. So what is a portion? What should we be eating? And what happens in our body when we eat this food? These are the questions Teagasc researchers are asking every single day, and they're going to answer your questions as well. Before we get into a panel discussion with all of these researchers, we're going to play a short video for you explaining a little bit about some of the work that they do. So let's go to Cork and Dublin, watch the video, and then we'll come back for a panel discussion and get to all of your questions.
Did you know that 2021 is the International Year of Fruit and Vegetables? We all know fruit and vegetables are good for us, but do you really know why? Welcome to Teagasc Horticulture and Food Research. We're finding out a lot about fruit and vegetables and want to share some of this with you. Let's start at the beginning with growing the fruit and veg.
Hi, I'm Lael Walsh and I'm a Research Officer in Sustainable Horticulture at Teagasc.
And I'm Lorraine Foley, a lecturer in horticulture at Technological University of Dublin.
We'd like to talk to you today about our research in spinach production and how we're trying to reduce food and plastic waste. We're trying to make spinach production more environmentally sustainable.
Environmental sustainability means thinking about the impact on the environment of the growing, processing and packaging of spinach. We're also looking to reduce the waste that occurs when consumers don't use all of the spinach they buy. The situation of food waste in Ireland is really quite scary. We waste about 1 million tonnes of food every year. As a nation, we're responsible for an average of 54 kilos of plastic waste per person every year. That's the weight of 54 bags of sugar.
Leafy veg like spinach is very watery, and watery crops are prone to spoil and be wasted very quickly. We use packaging to keep the environment of leafy veg constant, and the right packaging can reduce waste of perishable foods like spinach by keeping them edible for longer. But this packaging is often plastic-based, and synthetic plastics negatively affect the environment. So is it possible to reduce our reliance on plastic packaging and the risk of food waste?
Well, this is what we're trying to find out with our Research Leaf No Waste project. This is a project that's supported by the Science Foundation of Ireland.
What we know about spinach is that it continues to breathe after it's harvested. This is known as respiration, and this leads to moisture buildup which can cause mold, fungal, and bacterial growth. And this causes the spinach to spoil. We want to lessen this breathing through the use of biostimulants, or as we call them bio-based products, applied to the plant while it grows. This tackles food waste, but what about plastics?
There are some better packaging types that are biodegradable, compostable, or which can be recycled. We need to make these types of packaging more suited for use with spinach. If we can make the crop last longer and ensure it's packaged in a more environmentally sustainable way, this will lower the impacts on our environment, reducing food waste and global warming.
At Teagasc, we're trying to support growers to produce fruit and vegetables in the most environmentally sustainable way possible.
I hope you enjoyed our research on sustainable crop production.
Now let's go to Leo Finn, who will tell us about strawberry production. He works in our Ashtown campus with Esther Ferrari.
The strawberry crop is grown in troughs, set in gutters suspended at a height which is comfortable for picking, and it keeps the fruit clean and dry. Glasshouse conditions are warmer than outside, and extra heat can be provided to give a good growing environment. Plant nutrients are provided by regular liquid feeding events throughout the day, and this is constantly monitored. Plant stimulants can also be used to help protect the plants from pest and disease. We use a range of safe biological insect controls to predate or parasitize a range of possible pests such as aphid, whitefly, red spider mite, and therefore avoid harsh chemicals. Because the crop is grown indoors, there will not be as many natural insects available to pollinate the flowers, so a hive of native bumblebees is placed within the crop. If pollinators are not present, the fruit quality will be poor and the berries misshapen. We begin picking in mid to late April, harvesting at least twice a week. Lots of fruit continues to develop through May, and the crop will finish in early June. Some newer varieties may produce a second flush of fruit in August-September. The old plants and the substrate they are grown in are composted and used elsewhere on site at Ashtown.
Let's find out what happens next. We'll go to Teagasc Prepared Consumer Food Centre at our Ashtown campus to see ways to process and package our fruit and veg.
Hello, I'm Shay Hannon, National Prepared Consumer Food Centre Manager at Teagasc Ashtown. Within the centre, we work with a number of Irish food businesses to create new food and drink products. Our air drying and freeze drying systems are widely used to dry and produce a range of fruit and vegetable based powders. Drying is one of the oldest methods of food preservation, but can be a complex process and affects the texture, chemical composition, nutrition, and sensory properties of foods in different ways. We are currently investigating various drying processes through our air drying and freeze drying systems that can extract and create valuable ingredients from a wide range of fruits and vegetables. The nutritional benefits, together with the opportunity to reduce environmental impact, are important motivators to find a way to enrich our snack products with fruit and vegetables, contributing to a sustainable food system. In our air drying system, high quality drying results can be achieved in short times, utilising gentle drying at low temperatures. The unique design of this drying system ensures the process is very efficient and does not waste energy. For effective drying, the air should be hot, dry and moving, and these three factors are all interrelated. For drying vegetables, such as spinach, we carry out a series of trials to determine the rate of drying and the ideal temperature to make sure we retain as many nutrients as possible. We test the dried samples in our nutritional laboratory, and based on these results, we then work the most efficient method to dry the product. Food safety is also a key concern, and we test each product for a range of food poisoning and food spoilage organisms to ensure it is safe to eat. The National Prepared Consumer Food Centre also offers access to freeze drying technology. The basic principle of freeze drying is the removal of water from a product while the water is in a solid state of ice. This is a process known as sublimation, which is the vaporization of water directly from its solid state to its vapor state, without first passing through an intermediate liquid phase. This equipment lowers the temperature of a product to temperatures as low as -40 degrees Celsius, and then a high pressure vacuum is applied to take out the water in the form of vapor. The advantages of freeze drying foods and liquids are that it can be dried at low temperatures without damaging a product's physical and chemical structure. Freeze dried foods can be stored with an extremely long shelf life if stored properly. Freeze dried fruits, such as strawberries, are used commonly in breakfast cereals and ready to eat snacks. We have carried out trials on drying whole and sliced strawberries to work out the fastest method of drying while keeping the overall structure of the strawberry intact. We can then create finely chopped freeze-dried strawberries, like in breakfast cereals. Or we can use these strawberries to create strawberry powder, which can be used in a variety of snack products.
Here in Teagasc, we want to make sure all our food is safe to eat, including those delicious and nutritious fruit and vegetables. Let's hear from Kaye Burgess, one of our food safety scientists.
Climate change brings many challenges. It is predicted that in years to come, Ireland will face hotter, drier summers. This will have an impact for our fruit and vegetable producers. It will likely mean that they will need to use irrigation water more frequently, instead of relying on rainwater as they would traditionally do. This will need to be done in a sustainable way. International studies have shown that irrigation water and water used in processing can be a source of contamination of fruit and veg with food poisoning bacteria and viruses. It is therefore critical that irrigation water and water used in food processing is of the highest quality. Teagasc, along with partners in TU Dublin and UCD, has recently commenced a Department of Agriculture funded project called Hortiture. It is focused on microbial and chemical safety in fruit and veg production. In particular, we will focus on quality and safety of irrigation water. We will look at the quality of water from different sources used in the production of fresh fruit and veg, right down to identifying the microbial communities present, and we will look at options of reusing water in a sustainable and safe manner. Such information will identify when and where water treatment may be needed. As part of Hortiture, we're looking at various options for the treatment of water for irrigation and processing purposes, taking cost and practicality into account. This will support fruit and veg producers in assuring the safety and quality of their crops using sustainable irrigation options.
Now let's learn about what happens after we eat. How do we get all the goodness out of the food and into our bodies where we need it? We're going now to our Moore Park Research Centre, where some of the scientists will explain exactly what happens to the food in your body.
Every cell in our body requires fuel to function. When we eat our food, we get energy from carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Hi, my name is Alice Gibran, and I'm a senior research scientist in Food for Health Ireland, hosted by Teagasc. Today we're going to explain about our digestive system using the life-size model, and then later we're going to show you how we as scientists study the digestive system in the lab. Digestion starts in the mouth as a combination of physical and chemical processes. First chewing with our teeth, and then the release of saliva, which contains enzymes. You can think of enzymes as little scissors that cut your food into smaller and smaller pieces in the digestive system. When we swallow, the food moves down from the mouth into the esophagus and is pushed down into the stomach in a movement called peristalsis. In the stomach, food is churned and mixed with digestive juices. These juices are extremely acidic and have two purposes: to dissolve the food and to kill bacteria. The breakdown of protein starts in the stomach. Chickpeas and other beans are examples of vegetables that are high in protein. Next, the food is pushed down into the small intestine, here. Digestive enzymes from the pancreas are released. These enzymes break down some of the carbohydrates and proteins in our fruit and veg. Broccoli, carrots, and sweet potato are examples of vegetables high in carbohydrates. Meanwhile, the liver, which is above the stomach in our body, produces bile, which is then stored in the gallbladder. Bile is also released into the small intestine, where it breaks down fat molecules. Avocados are examples of fruits that are high in healthy fats. Now, most of the nutrients are ready to be absorbed into the bloodstream from the small intestine. We'll hear more about it later from Caoileann and Leo. Finally, in the large intestine, water is removed from the food and reabsorbed into the bloodstream.
Hi, my name is Conor Fitzpatrick, and I'm a PhD student here in Teagasc Moore Park. My research looks at digestion and how different foodstuffs can alter our digestive system.
We know how the digestive system works, but as scientists, we always want to learn more. For example, at the moment, we're studying new plant-based protein bars that are made of peas, rice, and other plant-based materials. But since the area of plant-based proteins is quite new, we know very little about how these foods behave in the digestive system. In our lab, we have developed an experiment that mimics the digestive system. Using common lab equipment and chemicals, we can copy the chemical and physical reactions that take place in our digestive system. And in this way, we can test a variety of foods.
Today we're going to show you what happens to our plant-based protein bar during digestion in our digestion model.
When we eat food, Digestion starts immediately in our mouths by physical and chemical methods. We replicate this by using a grinder to mimic our teeth and by adding simulated salivary fluid, which includes enzymes to mimic our saliva. After this, food passes along the esophagus into the stomach. We call digestion that occurs in the stomach gastric digestion. Similar to the oral phase, food is digested by both physical and chemical digestion in the gastric phase.
Physical digestion occurs in the stomach when the muscular walls churn the food in a process known as peristalsis. To mimic this in the lab, we use a stirrer which is attached to our overhead rotating device.
Chemical digestion is a very important part of digestion in the stomach. We add acidic gastric fluid and enzymes such as pepsin, which break down proteins into smaller parts or peptides. The gastric fluid and enzymes are added via 2 different tubes at a constant rate. We also measure the pH using a pH probe.
Finally, food is moved to the intestinal phase, where even more fluid and enzymes are added. After 2 hours in the intestinal phase, food is now fully digested and is ready to be absorbed into the bloodstream.
Thank you, Conor. Hi, my name is Caoileann and I'm a PhD student based here in Teagasc. The focus of my research looks at effective processing and digestion. The nutrients from our digested food must pass from the digestive system into the bloodstream. Here, they are transported around the body to where they are needed. This process is known as absorption and occurs here in the small intestine. The inner lining of the small intestine is covered in millions of tiny, finger-like structures called villi. Each villi is approximately 0.5 to 1.6 millimeters long and consists of many more microvilli. The small intestine is about 6 meters long in an adult, but these villi increase the surface area to approximately 250 meters squared, about the size of a tennis court. This increases the space for nutrients to be absorbed into the bloodstream, meaning that they can get to where they are needed quickly. We can visually assess the small intestine under the light microscope to see if there is any sign of damage or stress to the gut barrier. Broken, cracked and bent villi, a darker appearance and cell death at the villus tip are all signs of damage to the gut barrier and can be key indicators of any potential diseases. Celiac disease, where a person cannot digest gluten, is a prime example of such a condition in which the normal villi structure is visibly degraded. This barrier between the small intestine and the bloodstream is paper thin, but the cells are so close together that they act like a gatekeeper, preventing bacteria and large molecules from entering the bloodstream. This junction between the cells is called the tight junction. It's very important that these tight junctions are strong, as they can be affected by the food we eat.
Hi everyone, my name is Nunn and I'm a second year PhD student here in Moorpark. In our lab, we grow cells in special plates called transwell plates, just like this one here. The plate contains 2 layers. The cells, known as CACO2 cells, are widely used to represent the human intestinal epithelial barrier. The main advantage of using these cells is their ability to transform into a monolayer, which is a single layer of closely packed cells. This transformation takes around 21 days to occur. On day 21, we can then add the digested food to see how the different food particles affect the integrity of the tight junction. The cells are incubated with the digested food for 2 hours to mimic the time it would typically spend in the small intestine. If the food particles go straight through the cells, then we know that the tight junction isn't very strong. Gaps in this tight junction increase permeability and can allow bacteria and other toxins to pass into the bloodstream. Probiotic yogurts, broccoli, carrots and strawberries are examples of some foods that can help to improve our gut barrier health. Picking the right foods to include in our diet is extremely important. By using models of our digestive system to investigate the effects of different foods, we can choose which ones are the healthiest. Using that information, we can invest in our future well-being.
Finally, it's back to the question, why are fruit and veg good for us? How does eating fruit and vegetables help make us healthier? Take 5.
You've probably heard that you need to eat your 5 a day to stay healthy. In fact, the guidelines now say that we should eat between 5 and 7 portions a day, so really we need to eat at least 5.
But 3 out of 4 people in Ireland are not consuming their 5 portions of fruit and veg a day. In fact, we're only consuming 2 to 3 portions a day.
I'm Caoileann Murphy.
And I'm Sinead McCarthy, and we're nutrition researchers here at Teagasc. And today we're going to give you 5 good reasons to take 5 or more fruit and veg a day.
We need to eat fruit and veg to keep our bodies working at their best. Fruit and veg are a key source of vitamins and minerals that our body needs to work properly. For example, fruit like oranges and strawberries and vegetables like peppers and tomatoes are good sources of vitamin C. Vitamin C helps our bodies to make collagen, which is an important part of the structure of our skin, teeth and bones.
Fruit and vegetables also help protect us from disease. Not only do fruit and veg contain vitamins and minerals, but they also contain fibre and phytochemicals. Together, these nutrients help to protect us against diseases like diabetes, heart disease and cancer. Phytochemicals are the healthy compounds found in fruit and veg that give them their colour. That's why we need to eat a rainbow of colour to get all of these wonderful benefits.
Eating enough fruit and veg is important for our vision. Vegetables like carrots, kale and broccoli all contain carotenoids, which are a type of phytochemical. These carotenoids help to protect our eyes from damage, especially the part of our eye that allows us to see colour.
A diet rich in fruit and vegetables can also help maintain a healthy body weight. So for example, this bar of chocolate has the same amount of calories as this entire plate of fruit and vegetables, and that's a head of broccoli, a cup of strawberries, a banana and an entire red pepper. So not only will all of this fruit and veg keep you fuller for longer, you're also getting all of those wonderful nutrients and benefits we've just been telling you about.
Fruit can help fuel your sport. For example, mangoes and bananas are a good source of carbohydrate. These are the main fuel that our body uses during intense exercise, so eating enough of it can improve your sport performance. So now that we've hopefully convinced you to eat at least 5 portions of fruit and veg a day, here are 5 examples of what actually counts as a portion.
1 medium fruit like an orange, an apple or a banana. 2 small fruits like plums or kiwis. 1 bowl of homemade vegetable soup. 1 bowl of salad, half a cup of cooked veg, such as fresh or frozen carrots, broccoli or mushrooms.
So the next time you see the fruit in your bowl or the vegetables in your plate, eat up, thinking of all the health benefits you're getting in every single bite. Sláinte!
Thank you for watching. Now that you know a bit more about sustainable, delicious and nutritious fruit and vegetables, maybe you'd like to try growing your own. You can download some helpful guides from Teagasc website.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. And we have some of the stars of that video joining us now. They are Dr. Kaye Burgess, who's a senior food safety researcher. She works closely with horticulture colleagues, helping to ensure safety of fruit and vegetables. Shay, Hannon, who you saw, he's the manager of the Teagasc Prepared Consumer Food Centre. And he provides technical help to Irish food manufacturers to make sure their food doesn't spoil and how to develop new products. Lorraine Foley, who's from Technical University Dublin. She's partnering with Teagasc to develop more sustainable crops and better packaging solutions. Caoileann Murphy is a research officer focusing on our behavior as consumers and helping us to improve our food choices. Conor Fitzpatrick is a Teagasc Wall scholar at Teagasc Moorpark, and he's studying the digestion of fat and protein molecules using a lab digestion model that you saw in the video. And Nunn is also a Walsh scholar at Moorpark. He's studying how digestive food molecules enter the bloodstream and how some foods contribute to a healthy gut. We'd love to get as many of your questions as possible. So teachers, if you can facilitate those as best you can, we'd really appreciate that. Don't forget to tell us where you're from. Use the Q&A function underneath this video. You can also tweet us at Teagasc using the hashtag FestFarmFood. Okay, Lorraine, over to you first. Maybe you might tell me a little bit about your research, please.
Thanks, Jonathan. Yes, I'm part of Leaf No Waste. I work with Lael Walsh from Teagasc, and our research is really exploring the best way to optimize the growing system of spinach, for example, and how to reduce the inputs, make it more sustainable, but especially help harvest the crop and in such a way that we can package without relying too much on plastics, and maybe move into the area of alternative plastics like compostable plastics. So we're looking at using biostimulants in the growing process.
Yeah, typically when we talk about adding things to natural foods, people get a little bit cautious. So maybe could you explain what biostimulants are and whether or not they're harmful, or they have any negative effect?
Sure. So biostimulants would be they're quite common, especially if you're a gardener, like think about things like seaweed extracts and stuff. So they're not necessarily fertilizers, but they do help confer strength to a plant. So they have the positive effects, and some different biostimulants can do different things. For instance, improve the properties of defense within the plant. So a plant could cope with maybe more drought conditions or maybe pest attack, and so it can help a plant to recognize it's under attack and defend itself, as opposed to, so it's not necessarily an additive, but it's more something that you'd use during the growth of the plant itself in the cycle of growing.
Very good. Our first questions are coming in already. We're in Castleknock College. Some of our students want to know, what did you study in university, Lorraine? And any advice for students who are interested in this area of science? It's fifth year biology.
Thank you for the question. I studied horticulture, actually. I have a big interest in horticulture, but then I specialize in an area of, called environmental conservation as well. So I like to combine both, because I think the two are very much linked together.
Tell me the difference between biodegradable and compostable when we think of our packaging, because that's something that really confuses me.
Sure, and it's a good question, because there are a lot of similarities, but it's slightly more nuanced. So biodegradable plastics, both biodegradable plastics and compostable plastics, are created from plant resins and plant-based produce, as opposed to petroleum-based ingredients. But biodegradable produce breakdown as a consequence of microorganisms and over time frame, and that time frame could be any amount of time. It could be 1 year, 50 years, 100 years. It's indefinable. But with compostable packaging, there are very particular processes involved, and it includes microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, should I say, and heat. So it can only break down in a very particular type of environment, like a composting facility, and that's at a temperature of around 70 degrees upwards over a 90-day process. So it's a fast turnaround, and it's guaranteed output of composted materials that you can use in horticulture.
One of the things we've seen now is the introduction of soft plastics to our recycling, which is fantastic. And it's something that really annoyed me, having to separate those and know that this is just going into landfill. Can we now recycle all plastics, Lorraine, when it comes to food packaging?
Yeah, this is a new recommendation, so that we can put all our plastic waste, provided it's clean and dry, into our recycle bins, and it is collected and sorted. So there's a bigger service now, a bigger range of plastics that can be repurposed into different types of plastic reuses again. Now, there might be a tiny proportion of that plastic that can't be repurposed, and that goes into incineration, where it's used in the cement industry, the kilns there. So it's repurposed that way. But effectively, we can put all our clean plastic into our recycle bin.
Okay, over to Caoileann. Some questions for you from our audience. Remember, tell us where you're from, please. Is orange juice good for you?
So firstly, I'm from Dublin, and I've been in Teagasc since March. Is orange juice good for you? Well, it can count as one of your 5 a day. And one portion of orange juice would be, if you think about one of those plastic cups that you get in a water dispenser, 3/4 of one of those cups. Now, the one thing about juice is when you juice a fruit, you take out almost all of the fiber. And the fiber is something that's really important for our health, especially our gut health. So it's recommended that we mainly go for whole fruit and vegetables. So even if you were to drink, 3 gallons of orange juice, it can only count as one of your 5 a day. So for the most part, go for the whole fruits, but orange juice is okay too.
What is the healthiest vegetable, Caoileann?
There's no such thing as the healthiest vegetable. There's only healthy diets. So what's recommended is that we eat a wide variety of fruit and vegetables, and in particular, a wide variety of colors. So by going for a rainbow of colors like red, blue, white, then we can make sure that we get all the healthy nutrients on offer from the fruit and vegetables.
Another question for you. Are potatoes considered one of my 5 a day? Please say yes.
No, so potatoes don't actually count as one of our 5 a day, because they're actually not in the fruit and vegetable group. They're actually in the potatoes, cereal, and grain group. And they're still a very healthy food to include, but you just can't count them as one of your 5 a day.
Yeah, I kind of knew you were going to say that. So tell me, you spoke about phytochemicals in the video, Caoileann. What are phytochemicals and why are they important?
Phytochemicals are these really special compounds that we find in fruit and vegetables, and they help to protect the cells in our body from damage and can reduce our risk of diseases like cancer and heart disease. So there's actually been over 10,000 different phytochemicals identified, and they help to give fruit and vegetables their color, their smell, and their taste. So I'll give you an example, like the blue color in blueberries, that comes from phytochemicals, or the strong smell of garlic is also from phytochemicals.
Very good. And tell me how you got to do the job that you do, Caoileann, for those who are interested in studying this.
So in my undergrad in college, I did dietetics. So that mainly trains you to work in the hospital. But I liked that, but I was really interested in research. So I went on then and I did a PhD in nutrition. And that's how I got here.
Very good. Thanks, Caoileann. Your questions, please, into the Q&A. Lots of them coming in. Don't forget to tell us where you're from. Thanks very much. Kaye, your research is about irrigation. Maybe you might give us an overview of what you're looking at and why reusing water will be very important in the future.
Okay, so I'm a food safety microbiologist, and we're looking at the potential impact that irrigation water may have on fruit and vegetable safety. So we're looking towards the future when in Ireland we have an abundance of rain. But it is predicted that in the future, our summers will be warmer and drier, and that may impact on the rainwater that we use for irrigation. So we're looking at alternative sources for irrigation water and where we may be able to get that from and how we may be able to do it in a safe manner.
What is unsafe about water? What are the dangers of reusing water from downstream from rivers and so on?
So we'll say a river might have a number of different sources of contamination from the environment, whether it is grazing animals or industry or things like this. So we need to be careful about our selection of our water sources.
Okay. So what are you talking about? What sort? When you be a bit more specific for me, if you don't mind.
Okay. So specifically, what we're looking at in this project would be, we'd say, food poisoning bacteria that might be present in the environment, could be carried within the water, and then if the water, if this isn't identified as a risk, applied onto a crop and then contaminate the crop. And where we really have a problem is if this is on a crop that is eaten without cooking, a person is then consuming, has the potential to consume the pathogens. But what we try to do is to ensure that that doesn't happen in the first place.
Right. Okay. Very good. You've avoided the word fecal very well there. I see. So congratulations to you. Claire's a question that you might be able to answer. She says, what role can organic growing play in the future of growing in Ireland? Do you think we can reach a target of 7% land in organic growing? That's from Teagasc Horticultural College.
Okay, so organic farming wouldn't be an area that I would be particularly an expert in. I'm very much on the bugs that might be on the crop as opposed to the crop production itself. So I think that's maybe a
question for somebody else. Okay, no problems. Keep your questions coming into us. When it comes to the sort of microbes that are on these foods, for example, something comes downstream, it's used to irrigate the crops, and then they're put into packaging, we eat them directly. Is washing going to get rid of that, or how do we make that food safe for the consumer?
Okay, so I would always be of the prevention is better than cure. So we really try and prevent these contaminants, these bugs or chemical contaminants getting onto the produce in the first place. Absolutely, the consumer has a role to play as well, ensuring that the foods that they maintain the safety of their produce, how they store stuff in the fridge, and let's say rinsing the products. But it is a whole chain approach. You start really from the start of the chain and ensuring that, and our food producers are really good at doing this, ensuring that their foods are produced in a safe manner, transported and stored in a safe manner, and then the consumer is the last bit of the chain.
Okay, very good. Lorraine, is that a question you could answer regarding the organic targets in Ireland?
Yeah, I think I can make a stab at it. I know that certainly with horticulture and let's say organic growing, but plus let's say growing under glass and under protection that way, we actually are moving it towards a situation where we're using very little chemicals, and we're really trying to avoid pesticides as much as possible, simply because we bought into the integrated pest management protocols. So it's a European-wide agenda where we just really reduce all inputs like that. So we encourage biological controls, and we encourage better ways of managing the growing environment to reduce risk of disease getting into the produce and growing disease-resistant plants in the first place. So there's a whole sequence of events that really lead up to that, rather than targeting killing insects. None of us are a real fan of that, because there are some beneficial insects out there.
Very good, thank you. Shay, let's talk a little bit about your work, because you were talking about different methods of drying food, and I thought it was a really fascinating. But one of the questions I'm asking is, if you remove all the water, is that all you're removing in these different approaches to drying foods? Do all the nutrients get preserved, or do these foods become slightly less healthy and slightly more sugary through that process?
Thanks very much, Shannon. It's an interesting question, and a lot of work we do within the Prepared Consumer Food Centre is actually comparing drying technologies.
Right.
So we obviously have access to freeze drying technology and air drying technology, and we would do research on how does that impact foods in different ways. So obviously, they both want to achieve essentially the same outcome, which is the removal of moisture from food. But in a lot of the research we've done, particularly on spinach, which we've seen in the video, we actually see that freeze-dried spinach powder in the end actually retains more nutrients. Now, this is down to a variety of factors. When, I suppose, vegetables and fruits are exposed to high temperatures, that can have an impact on nutrient retention. So, for example, vitamin C, when at higher temperatures, we can see a 50% reduction in vitamin C, or thiamine or niacin. So these are all very heat-sensitive nutrients and minerals that we can preserve, I suppose, better through freeze-drying. Now, obviously, the process of freezing can be quite expensive because the equipment is a considerable cost. But a lot of the work we do is actually comparing those two drying technologies. But really and truth, freeze drying retains a lot of nutrients. It's almost 99% of what you will get from a natural product.
I spend quite a bit of my parenting time trying to trick my children into eating better, Shay. And when you mentioned the spinach additive, I was wondering, is that sold as a separate product? Spinach dust, essentially, something I could stir in to the foods, because I find if I could be bothered to chop it up finely enough, the children don't tend to notice the taste. Are people looking at that as an additive to spaghetti bolognese or whatever?
It's an extremely interesting one, John. We worked on spinach. Obviously, in the form which most people consume it in, it's in a leaf, and I suppose that's mightn't be as appealing to children in particular. But what we've noticed when we actually dried it, created that powder, it actually is quite a mild flavour, and this is very easy to incorporate into food. So we've actually used it in a number of smoothies, cold pressed juices, and again, some people might be familiar with the range of juices and different smoothies on the market at the moment. I think, not to give Innocent Smoothies a plug here, but they have a lovely, gorgeous green smoothie at the moment, and that colour is actually achieved through spinach. So it can be incorporated into a wide range of foods. I myself have used it in omelettes and in different meals, but also from an industrial perspective, people are incorporating it in the bakery, again, right across the board. I suppose for any bakers out there trying to incorporate it into your bread, it'll give you a nice nutrient boost and not impact the flavour.
You need to get this into the hands of, I spy an innovation here. You need to get this into the hands of consumers and parents, I think, Shay. A little tin, shake it in, and you give them maybe half their one a day. It'd be great. They're 7 a day. So you talked about modified atmosphere packaging, and I've always wondered what is in that atmosphere that we create inside the bags, because I've read all sorts of rumors and theories about what's in it. What is in the bag that retains the freshness and that is then lost when we open it?
I guess most people are familiar if they pick up their fresh meats or cooked meat products or vegetable products within a store, you'll see a line on the back, as you mentioned there, Jonathan, packed within a modified atmosphere. So what that really means is, obviously, naturally, the air contains up to 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, but that oxygen has an impact on spoilage. So really, through modified atmosphere packaging, what we do is we extract or replace a lot of that oxygen with another gas. So again, a lot of people today or over the weekend might consume a packet of crisps, but that packet of crisps is actually packed within 100% nitrogen. And that, in essence, inhibits antibacterial growth. So bacteria that could cause spoilage. So in essence, you're achieving a triple or quadruple effect in terms of your shelf life by removing that oxygen from the pack.
And nitrogen, of course, passes through, even if you were to consume it, it passes through the body. I know this from diving.
That's, again, nitrogen, an inert gas. As soon as you open that pack, it completely disappears into the atmosphere, but you have your fresh product to consume. And again, this has a massive impact in terms of shelf life and a sustainable economy that you can increase the shelf life for a lot of food products.
Someone else has a question for you, Shay. How about the taste and texture after freeze drying? It changes dramatically, right?
It does indeed. Now, the structure is the first thing you'll see. So when you freeze dry your product, the cell structure is broken apart because obviously we've removed up to, in some instances, 99% moisture from the product. And a lot of fruits and vegetables are 90 to 90% water. That's what they're comprised of. So in terms of taste, flavor, yes, depending on what we then do with that particular product, the sweetness can be changed, can be heightened. But from a nutrient perspective, though, which is an important thing, we're retaining a lot of those nutrients which we want to keep that was in the original natural product, albeit with slightly different taste.
Very good. I have loads of questions coming in. I will get to them in order as I go through the various speakers. But Conor, tell me a little bit about your work, because I'm really interested in this sort of replica of the stomach. How acidic are our stomach fluids? Like, if we were to put stomach fluid on our skin, would it burn?
Yeah, hi Jonathan, thanks for the question. Stomach fluid is very acidic. So if you do put it on your skin, it will burn. So it's actually quite interesting. You might think, how can I have this in my stomach and not get hurt? Or how can I be walking around carrying around acidic fluid? But the stomach is very well adapted. So we have cells lining our stomach, and they produce a protective mucus, which stops any acid burns from occurring in your stomach.
So tell me a little bit about your experiments and what we know about different types of foods and how long they take to digest.
Yeah, so in our lab, we actually do some quite interesting research. So we can actually digest foods without using any animal models or any humans. So we can use just really common lab equipment like basic salts, some stirrers, some beakers, things like that, enzymes, acids, and we can actually replicate what happens in the body. So it's actually quite interesting. And to get your question, yeah, so certain foods are digested at different rates, of course. So foods with high calories are digested slower. So you can see in our semi-dynamic model that we showed you in the video, the emptying rate is based on how many calories are in the food that we use. So foods with high calories are emptied slower from the stomach into the small intestine, and that will slow down digestion.
We know quite a bit about this process because of a guy called Alexis St. Martin who was shot in the stomach, and rather than patch it up, the landowner where he was working was a trapper. He basically kept the hole in the stomach open and stuck food in on a string to see how long things would digest. Luckily, we don't do that so much anymore, Conor. But can you tell me, like for a meat versus a chocolate bar, do we see huge differences in how long things take to digest?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting point. That's one of the main reasons why our digestion in the lab is so important. So we don't have to do that anymore. I don't think our ethics would allow us to keep someone's stomach open for that amount of time. We would have to patch it up quite quickly if that happened in today's world. But yeah, so something like meat. So if you think about it, when you eat meat, if you don't chew it, if you just swallow your large pieces of meat, which is quite hard to digest, it will stay in your stomach for longer than something like milk, because at the bottom of our stomach, in between our stomach and our small intestine, we have something called a pyloric valve. So it's a little small opening, and only foods of a certain diameter or a certain size can pass through. So yeah, things So it depends on a number of factors, like how well you chew your food, and as I said earlier, how many calories are in it. So
why is the color of food different when it comes out than when it goes in?
That's a really interesting question. So if you think about fruits, why are fruits brightly colored like that? Interesting thing about fruits is that they actually want to be eaten. They want animals to eat them. So when we eat fruits, we also eat their seeds, and then when we pass them out as feces, we spread the seeds. So it's a very good way of fruits to travel, for the seeds to travel, so they can germinate in different places. So what happens when we eat them is that the chemicals in the fruits that they're called flavonoids, that they absorb colors. So that's why fruits have different colors. But during digestion, enzymes can break down these chemicals. One interesting thing is beetroots. You can see that when you eat beetroots, and then maybe if you look again when you pass them out, that you might see the reddish purple color. That's because these flavonoids can be broken down properly by our bodies.
Okay, very good. It's something I'll look out for in the future, Conor. Thank you very much for that. Home activity for you folks. Leo, let's talk about your work and the type of cells you use to represent the human body. Can you take us through what we saw in the video in a bit more detail, please?
Yeah, so kind of like Conor was saying there, obviously today we can't, feed our dry powders or whatever we're testing to someone and expect them to give us a sample back. But what we do in the lab is we use different cell lines that have kind of the same properties as the cells we would have in our body. So one cell line I use, you saw it in the video, it's called the CACO2 cell line, and we use that to represent the intestinal barrier. So the main advantage of that cell is it transforms kind of into a single layer of cells, just like the intestinal cells in our body. So the other cell line I use is the STC1 cell line. And what I look for in that cell in particular is its ability to produce satiety hormones. So we can look at how different foods make us feel fuller. So in response to different foods, these cells will produce the hormones, and we can go on to measure how much hormones were produced.
So these are cultured living cells that you can sort of use to model what would be happening in our stomach, but you have open access to it, as you say.
Exactly, yeah.
So talk to me about different bacteria and our gut barrier, because I saw that the sort of gaps that you were illustrating there and the problems with that. Take me through that.
Yeah, so it's a great question. A lot of different foods, they can either promote that barrier or they can have damage the barrier essentially. So what that barrier does is it selectively controls what passes through the layer. So things like bacteria and toxins, obviously the barrier doesn't want those to pass through. But certain nutrients like proteins or something from fruits, vegetables, nuts, it wants those. So over time, that barrier can get damaged. So foods like white bread, pasta, white sugar, kind of refined carbs, they can damage this barrier. So you should kind of try and limit your intake of those foods, but also eat the gut promoting foods at the same time. But yeah, so toxins like that coming into your bloodstream obviously isn't a good thing and can lead to diseases down the line.
Yeah, a quick one on satiety hormones then. That's the other cell line that you were looking at. Yeah. What are satiety hormones and why are they important?
Yeah, so from a basic standpoint, or I suppose hormones are just kind of a chemical messenger in your body. So they're secreted, they're released in response to something else happening. So in the case of foods and satiety hormones, when we consume food, these satiety hormones are released. And what they do is they make us feel full. So in particular protein, it's known to be the food that makes you feel the fullest. And these hormones then, they have actions in the body. So one example of that is called gastric emptying. So like Conor was saying, the gastric phase is kind of the stomach area. And what this hormone does is it prevents the food from leaving your stomach. So, you kind of start to feel full and like no more food is really going to fit in there. So your brain just tells you stop eating essentially.
Sorry, and the questions come in for you, and then we're going to get to some others. So thanks, keep them coming. How can probiotics help the junctions? These bacteria can help rebuild the damaged junctions, or do they just preserve them from toxins and other harmful compounds?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I suppose, bacteria, your gut kind of depends on bacteria essentially. I'm not really an expert in the area, to be honest, but I kind of focus more on plant proteins. But obviously probiotic yogurts, you need to feed your gut and provide it with the bacteria and the flora that it needs to function. But yeah.
Okay, so lots of questions here. Let's go to Caoileann. Is the myth true about carrots helping your eyesight, Caoileann? I think you hinted at that earlier.
Yeah, so carrots contain carotenoids, and what carotenoids do is they help to protect the part of our eye from damage that actually allows us to see colour. So that myth is true.
Here we are in Ardfert National School in County Kerry. Hi to you. Our question is, can eating too much fruit or veg make you sick?
No, so fruit and vegetables is the one food group of all of the 5 food groups that it's recommended the more the better. So go crazy on it, but try to eat a wide variety rather than just eating one type of fruit or vegetable so that you get all the different nutrients.
I presume you mean generally, because if you really forced yourself, you could probably harm yourself. Like if you
just sat down and pounded fruit and veg, that's probably not a great idea.
No, it's not a great idea. No, yeah. So I do have another one for you. Yeah. Sorry. Is sugar cane a vegetable, and unprocessed, is it healthy? So unprocessed sugar cane, is that a vegetable, and is it healthy? Do you think more edible fruits and vegetables will be discovered in the future? I suppose start with that, Caoileann, and we might go to someone else for the second part of that.
So sugar cane doesn't count as a vegetable. And then I'm actually not sure, will more fruit and vegetables be discovered in the future? Maybe. Probably, I'd say probably not. We've probably discovered most of them, but I don't know.
Well, didn't broccoli was invented by the broccoli family, who now make the James Bond films by crossing the cauliflower and the pea plant. And that was actually they actually invested in it. They didn't invent it, but my understanding is that was I thought broccoli was around since there was a natural, but actually it was only recently enough. So it is theoretically possible. It's a good question. Theoretically possible to breed new ways of breeding, or new species that might breed a little bit better and come up with something different. Where can we find out more information about rainbow diet again for you, Caoileann, before we move on?
So when I said to eat, there's no real rainbow diet, but it's just the advice to eat a rainbow of colours when it comes to fruit and veg. But you can find out more details about that by looking up the Healthy Ireland website and looking up the food pyramid. And that will give you lots of information, not only about fruit and veg, but about the different food groups and how much you should be eating for a healthy diet.
Excellent. Lorraine, question from Brie O'Connell saying, I'm curious why the plants spinach are being manipulated, for want of a better word, to facilitate the newly designed packaging biofilms, rather than trying to find a packaging product that fits the plants. The plant breeds after being picked, so can we find a packaging product that suits its breathing and retains its own natural nutrients? Hope this makes sense.
It's a great question, and it's a very valid point. So just to go back a bit, the spinach that we're trialing in our experiments, in our research, we are applying a type of biostimulant that is found in nature. It's a type of silicon that plants respond to. It's called silicic acid, and but we're applying it as a foliar spray. The merit behind that is that we want the plant to be a bit stronger, so that when we harvest it, it can hold its integrity for a bit longer, and it can work with existing plastic packaging, but also alternatives. We're just opening up the window to apply, would this work if we were to remove plastic from the equation? And I mentioned compostable plastic as one of the solutions. The compostable plastic that we have used in our trials is actually quite an old existing plastic. It's called PLA. It's a cornstarch based plastic that's used in different types of food sectors, but we're just repurposing it for the sake of experiments. But we're not actually tweaking the plant as such, or the genetics of the plant. We're just feeding it a little booster, like a little tonic, if you like, to see.
On 10 Things to Know About, plug RTE1 Monday nights, we saw in the last episode that some of these bioplastics and biofilms are being generated from blood. Can you tell us a bit about that? Is that something you can tell us about, Lorraine?
Well, I wouldn't have an awful lot of information on that particular element because it's such a broad subject.
Yeah.
So from a horticulture point of view, I would be working with maybe the seaweed extracts or the compost tea extracts or humic acid. But I did hear about hemoglobin being used in biofilms. That's just a novel technology. But I wouldn't really be the best person to answer that question.
No, that's fine. If you want to know more about it, I suppose you can watch 10 Things to Know About back on the player. We have another question that maybe maybe Shay, because you deal with kind of producers. Someone says land area in Ireland under fruit and veg growing is constantly falling, with more veg being imported. Do you think this trend can be reversed with us as a country growing more fruit and veg? How do we do that? Teagasc horticulture student asking that question.
Yeah, it's a good question, Jonathan, and obviously it's I wouldn't have much exposure to the horticulture side, but a lot of it does boil down to in industry costs. So the cost of actually producing, growing vegetables in this country, and that is becoming a bigger challenge. And obviously our climate doesn't lend itself to the production, I suppose, of a wider variety of crops and fruits. Now, obviously, we could, you could look at greenhouses and different methods of obviously growing fruits and vegetables. But again, your energy costs, your labor costs increase dramatically. So there is going to have to be a trade-off, I guess, over the next few years in terms of how we use our energy or water resources to grow vegetables that perhaps may not be natural to our climate. And there's always going to be a trade-off there in terms of cost.
Thanks very much for that, Shay. Keep your questions coming. We're running out of time here. But Kieran Kelly says, is there any benefits or advantages of fungi-based proteins over conventional plant-based proteins? And are the inputs required more climate friendly? I don't know who'd be best to answer that. Would it be Caoileann, or would it be maybe someone like Cormac or Conor? Who would be best to answer that one?
There might not be any particular health kind of implications, but it might more be on a kind of a more sustainable than maybe an animal-based protein. Fungi and plant proteins together, really, they're a bit more sustainable.
Thank you for saving
me. That's all I
kind of have about that. I was drowning, so thank you very much for saving me. Conor, you were talking about using saliva, sort of a synthesized saliva to help you simulate what happens in our mouths. You had the mechanical grinder, and then you had this fake saliva. And this is a bit of a gross question, but models never really give an exact environment. Why don't you use real saliva for the saliva?
Well, I suppose one reason that we don't use real saliva is that a really important thing to do in science is to make sure that all your experiments are repeatable and replicatable. So if we use real saliva, we don't know if that's going to be different from our first experiment to our last experiment. So a really useful thing that we do is make simulated saliva that is the exact same in all our different replicates. And that's one of the main reasons. And also,
but is that a limitation then of the models if they don't, because it's sort of a standardized saliva sample? Is that a limitation of that sort of modeling?
Yes, of course it is probably a limitation, but we can replicate it quite accurately. We use the same kind of concentrations of salts, the same amount of enzymes. But yeah, of course it is going to be a limitation.
Well, folks, thank you so much. I found that absolutely fascinating, and I hope you did too. Thank you so much to everyone for your responses to questions, and I really appreciate all of those questions coming from you, whether you're in school or watching from college or at home. Thank you so much for paying attention. Thanks to Lorraine, Foley, Shay, Hannon, Kaye, Burgess, Caoileann Murphy, Conor Fitzpatrick, and Leo Nunn. Thanks as well to Moira Caffrey, Myrne Egan, Carol Griffin, Katrina Boyle, Siobhan Dermody, and Eileen Flynn, who put all of this event together. And it's no mean feat, let me tell you. The event is made possible by Science Foundation Ireland. It's also sponsored and run by Teagasc. And we have a full week of events. We're coming to the end now. We have another event tomorrow at 11 a.m. It's our final event, and it's Kids Corner, facts about cows, milk, and grass, and it should be great fun. So if you know any young kids, please do register now, or if you're in a school, let them know that it's going to be a fantastic event tomorrow at 11. And if you are interested in a free €50 all-for-one voucher, please do answer our survey and we'll put you in a draw to win that. Finally, we've been working with Science Foundation Ireland, and they're creating our future campaign. We're looking for research directions from everyone who's been watching the events over the past week. What should Irish researchers and Irish scientists be investigating? You can have your say at creatingourfuture.ie. I will see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. Thanks again for watching, and thanks to all of our panelists. I'll see you soon.